Welcome back, everybody. Hey, Cosmo, how you going?
I'm going well.
Awesome, good stuff. We have just finished the story of Samuel, Saul, David. We are now moving into Kings and Chronicles. This part of the story, we're going to cover a bit of history. It's pretty important for our understanding of the Old Testament prophets and stuff like that. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to take half an hour to do this. Okay, this is First and Second Kings. It's mainly historical narrative, okay? And it covers 400 years from Solomon, when he became the king, and ends with the exile of Judah. There's three main sections. Look at that. Solomon's reign, then there's a divided monarchy, and then there's Judah alone. Those are the three things. We're going to see in this stuff observation of how God works. We're going to see good examples of great kings and great leaders and bad kings and bad leaders. That's pretty much it. We're going to follow the course of Israel's journey and see where they get to. Interestingly, on our timeline, look how much this book covers, right? Almost the whole second half of the timeline, First and Second Kings. So we need to figure out what all of these things are and what they mean, and we'll get into that. We've got Kings and Divide. We'll get to that next. We've got the cycle of apostasy. We'll get to that. We've got exile of the north, renewal and the exile of the south. We'll cover what all those mean as we go through. First off, King Solomon becomes king. Solomon's considered to be the peak of the kingdom. We have some famous stories that Solomon did. Okay, someone tell me a famous story about King Solomon.
He had a dream and God showed up to him and said, ask me whatever you want. And God, Solomon said, I have wisdom to my
Yes. We're all these great people of yours. And what did God say when Solomon asked for wisdom?
Because you haven't asked for gold and wealth and all the rest of it, I'm going to give that to you anyway.
Yep. So yeah, so Solomon wants wisdom. That's good. What else did Solomon do?
Yeah.
Wisdom. How does these two things go together, right? Wisdom and lots of wine. What's going on?
Yeah.
Can't have been that smart. Okay.
Maybe because he was so wise, he was able to keep that.
Okay. What was the result of marrying lots of wives? Idolatry, right. How did that happen? Yes, so the general deal, okay, is that, and this is how things work. You marry the daughter of the king next in the country next door, whatever, and you set up her embassy, which represents their country, right? So that you have a peace ties with that country, and she has a little bit of that country, like an embassy thing in your city, and in that place she's going to put her idols and do her thing, right? And because you've made peace with that country, you've now made peace with their gods as well. And so suddenly we started getting all these little shrines and things appearing around the place, and which is a bad thing, obviously. And this is the big, probably this thing here, the idols that came with it is the actual problem. The wives not necessarily the problem, but the wives, the wives not necessarily a problem, but the idols that came with it is the big problem. What else happens? What else did Solomon do? Built the temple, right? And we can talk about that. That's pretty important. What happened? So we do see when David was told he couldn't build the temple, what did he do? He didn't throw a tantrum. That's right. Oh, we'll build the temple. He didn't throw a tantrum. He started saving up so that the next generation would build a great and glorious temple, and it wouldn't be a burden on them. So he put aside out of his own resources and out of the kingdom's resources a whole lot of stuff stored up, ready, materials and stuff ready to go to build the temple. Great mentality, generational mentality, rather than giving them a big burden, providing up for them in advance. Very cool. Okay, so he built the temple. What happened when he built the temple? Glory of God cloud filled the temple, just the same as when they built the tabernacle in the wilderness. The cloud of God came in. That's very important. What does the cloud mean? God's presence is here. Right. That's a big deal. God, so this is why this is the climax of their history. Physical temple, presence, a cloud of God's presence in the temple. God is really here. This is the best place to be on earth, right? Because the glory of God is in the temple. That's amazing. Powerful, powerful time. Anything else important? Solomon's story. Okay, listen. So we ended up with, we've got Proverbs. Maybe Ecclesiastes as well. Yeah. Okay. Some songs. We wrote some of the Psalms. Okay. What we have, and now by the time we've got to Solomon, we've got this whole new class of people that have been brought up in the city, brought up in royalty. So the first education, isn't it? Rather than sitting around the campfire telling your kids how plants grow and how to look after the animals, right? We now have people who are being educated to be future leaders. So they're starting, especially on Solomon, to have schools and education. So the Proverbs, right, as part of your training, if you want to be a wise leader, governor, okay, because we're now appointing governors over towns and regions and are building a whole economic infrastructure and everything. We need leaders to do that. You've got a whole class of people that have never worked, but have grown up in privilege and luxury, right? Been educated, so they're now smart and intelligent, and then they become given governing roles and stuff like that. So this is a whole new class that's come into society just around, especially with Solomon. Okay, this is a new thing. Okay, anything else important from Solomon? Something, what else? Because of wisdom?
Oh,
Well, Queen she became, right? Queen as she became, she came to visit and she said, wow, it's even bigger than I thought, right? I've seen for myself. This is amazing. Surely your God is awesome. Look at how amazing your palaces, your temple is, your people that wait on you. This is the best thing, right? Right? Okay, and gave glory to God because of what she saw. So very powerful moment. Here's some of the things that are going on in Solomon's life. Solomon built a temple. Here's a picture. It's pretty much the same design as his tabernacle. So you've got bronze altar where you do sacrifices. You've got a sea where you watch the big basins of what you do. You've got some pillars that hold the front door up. You've got a doorway. You've got in here, this is the holy place. You've got an altar where you go to things. There's also a table to put bread on, and there's a candlestick, you've got some library. Then in the middle, here's the big curtain in the most holy place where the Ark of the Covenant sits, right? This is the standard temple thing. How often does the priest go in here? Once a year after lots of sacrifices, blah, blah, blah. And they go in here regularly to burn incense on the altar and change the bread on the food, stuff like that. So big temple, very exciting. A great achievement as predicted by in the prophecy. Okay, then what happens after Solomon dies?
His son came to power.
His son's name is Rehoboam. Yeah.
And the people came to Rehoboam and said, like our Lord, rather than us, he put taxes on us and made us slaves.
That's right.
Really hard. And the son went and consulted the people, the elders, and the older men said, you should listen to the people and lighten their load, and you can see they will serve you.
Yes.
And then he went to the younger men of his age, and they went, no, tell them that we will, my finger was like the topic about.
Yeah.
And that I will increase, and that I'm going to be worse than my father and everything else, and it's split the kingdom into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom.
Yes, pretty much exactly what happened. So Rehoboam comes to be king, right? And the people, because all these temples and palaces and stuff have been built using forced labor and stuff like this, and high taxation, all that sort of thing. The people are like, this has been hard work. Give us a break. Back off on all these building programs, and elders say, yeah, listen to them. You'll be a servant to them today, and they'll serve you forever. And he talks to his peers who've been brought up in a privileged class, they've never looked a day in their lives, okay, don't have any connection with the common people. And he says, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. You thought he was hard. I'm going to be extremely hard. I'm going to double everything. Okay, and of course people are like, we're out, do it yourself. And so we had 10 tribes split off. So here's Judah and Benjamin, these tribes here, these 3 tribes here, all the others. We're out. We're not interested in serving a temple down here somewhere. Jerusalem, we're not interested in building a city in Jerusalem. We would rather look after ourselves. So they split the place in half. Split the thing in half. And there was going to be a bit of a civil war. He said, I'll send out my first general in charge of forced labor to get these people to come back and do my work. And the prophet came and said, don't fight your brothers, just let it go. And so let it go. It was all good. Interesting, you see the contrast between David, who was the shepherd, right? He'd won battles to set people free. He'd sung songs. Everyone sang David's songs. He was like the superhero, whereas Solomon was now his son. And then generations that were disconnected from the people, we start to see they're no longer seen as the people's king, all that sort of thing. Classic. As people go through generations of royalty and things like that. So what happens? What happens when we split the country in half? Who ruled in the northern half? Anyone know?
Yeah, but his name. Is it
Jeroboam, that's right. Jeroboam was a general. Someone prophesied over him in Solomon's day that he would take over and be an enemy of Solomon and blah blah. So he fled to Egypt. And when Solomon died, he came back and he led the uprising. And he became their king. What did Jeroboam do to make sure that the people were loyal to him?
Oh, he set up a golden calves and places to worship.
Golden calves. Oh my goodness, I've never heard of that before. How original. Golden calf idols, right? The problem would be every year, 5 times a year, everyone has to go to Jerusalem for the Passover feast, the Feast of Tabernacles, right? All these different feasts to meet God, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, it is too hard for you to go all the way down to Jerusalem every year from all around here. We'll build our own temples, we'll do our own thing, right? That way you won't keep going back and going back to Judah again. So at Bethel, we'll golden calf, right? And one up here at Dan, golden calf. Okay? It is too far for you to go to Jerusalem. Oh, that's a long way, right? To go to worship the Lord. We'll make our own golden calf. And this was the great sin. People were all the way out here to offer to the golden calves. And we won't, doesn't matter. We'll appoint anyone we feel like to be the priest. You don't have to be a Levite. Another great problem, right? It's supposed to be Levites that serve and do the religious things. Well, anyone I feel like it, I can appoint to be my priest. So we had a whole new religious thing going on up here with calf idols. Not Levites being priests. So generally, the Levites sort of came down to Jerusalem, being near the real temple, or they changed sides for money, whatever, and took the new gods offering and idols. And so this is where we had Ahab and Jezebel, right? They became kings. We all know about Ahab and Jezebel. We put Jezebel's name. Ahab was a normal king in those days. He wanted a vineyard to grow veggies for the palace. So he went to the guy that owned the vineyard that was right next to the palace and said, hey, can I buy your vineyard? I want to use that as a veggie garden for my palace. It's right next door. He said, oh, you can't do that. This is my ancestral property given to my father's father's father. Belongs to our family for generations. God has given it to us. I can't just sell it. And so he goes home, he's all depressed. And his wife Jezebel says, why are you depressed? You're the king. Yeah, but I want to use that vineyard for a veggie garden. And he won't sell it to me. She goes, mate, you're the king. I'll sort this. Gets 2 guys, gets them killed, assassinated. Here you go. I've got your vineyard for you. Do what you like. Right? You're the king. So this is how kings operate when they're not under God. And this is what we see happening in the Northern Kingdom. In the Northern Kingdom, pretty much every king who got on the throne got there by assassinating the previous king. Or the next one is there was hardly ever a son took over. It was always a political maneuver, assassination. For a while, there was 2 kings at the same time vying over who was going to be the king. General chaos, like every other nation around them. Okay, generally very unstable. A lot of murder, intrigue, politics, all that sort of stuff going on all the time. Okay, and we've got Elijah and Elisha. They live up here. Right? Elijah's talking to Ahab, he's talking to Jezebel. He's telling the people, his messages, what are you doing worshiping golden calves? Okay? God is in Jerusalem, the temple is our God, that's where we should be. This whole thing is off. And so all of these prophets, like Elijah and Elisha, we know all their stories, they're living up here, dealing with the foreign kings that are trying to invade. Okay? And kings like, oh, we need God's help. Okay, Syria here, alien is going to invade us. We need God's help. Elisha's living here somewhere. Elisha says to the king, I know, because I'm the prophet, I can tell you this guy's been invading in 3 days' time and he's going to attack here. Okay, so they get their army, they're all ready, the guy invades, they get defeated every time. And they say, what's going on? How come we get defeated all the time? How come he always knows when they're coming? Oh, Elijah the prophet. His God listens to everything you say in your secret, and he tells the king. This is why we can't ever win. So they go to try and take Elijah. Remember, they capture Elijah, and Elijah's surrounded by armies, and his mates all afraid. And he says, open his eyes and looks on the hills of the angels of God, the armies of God around him. There's more for us than against us. So he takes the army of aliens. They take them to the city. I'm not sure which city it was. And they put on a feast for them. And they send them back. Right? Okay. This is crazy stuff goes on. God is powerfully with the prophets. Okay, and sometimes he helps them win battles just so everyone else knows that God is greater than their gods. And other times he completely abandons them and it's to be defeated. And it's a bit of a push and shove thing going on about what's going on there. All the way through the rest of the Old Testament, you will hear a reference to the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, caused Israel to commit. So every king in Judah, every king is measured against David. He served in the ways of God like his father David had. Or he was fully devoted to God like his father David was. Or he wasn't fully devoted to God like his father David was. In the northern kingdom, he walked in the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that he had caused Israel to commit. He was like his father Jeroboam, he walked in the sins of, and basically idolatry is the sin that Jeroboam caused Israel to commit. And they just walked in it all the time. And so we end up with every king in the Northern Territory is bad. So none of them follow God. They're all following idols and doing their thing. In Judah, there's a mixture. Down south, there's a mixture. Some of the kings are following God. Some of them turn away to idols. Some of them come back to follow God again. Some of them turn away to idols. So we have a bit of a struggle going on. It's a bit of a double-minded country, depending on who's in charge at the time. Okay, let's have a look at some of these kings. At the end, this is important thing, dividing kingdom, blah, blah, blah. Judah alone, from 1 Kings chapter 18, Israel, northern kingdom, gets invaded by Assyria. The world power of Assyria comes, invades, conquers Israel and exiles all the people. Brings in people from other countries to settle there. Okay, and comes down to attack Jerusalem, but is defeated. Okay, and so he moves again. Because God is with these people and God is not with these people. So all through Isaiah and some of the prophets, you will hear them prophesying, Israel, you will be defeated. You will be defeated by the king of Assyria, talking about here. But sometimes the prophets will say, Samaria will be defeated. Samaria was where they set up the capital in northern Israel. Okay, that's the Samaria of the New Testament where the Samaritans live. Okay, they've gone here, they turn to idols, they get invaded by Assyria, they all get exiled. Assyria brings refugees from other conquests, tells them to live here. They bring their own gods, their own idols and things like that. So you've got a mixture of the God of Israel, the golden calves, and other nations' idols, all mixed together, and they sort of think they belong to Israel somehow, but it's all fake. Okay, and so down here, after 1 Kings 18, this is now the territory of King Assyria. This is their own Israel's left under the son of David's rule. So the son of David is going to rule forever now. Okay, so we have some kings of Judah. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Here's a comment. Israel was a frequent target for invasion because it was on the trade routes, yes. If you go to that, Egypt's down here, over here somewhere, and the Arab countries over here, and Greece and Italy, everything's up here. If you want to trade, you have to come through here. This is the fact. And so these countries make money through border taxes. you want to come from Egypt, you've got to go through here, up there, selling the stuff. Well, you can either sail a boat and sink and drown, or you can come up here and pay tax on the way in and out at the time. So they made a bit of money by just taking the taxes to go through their country. And so therefore, if you owned this country, you didn't have to pay tax anymore, you could make more money and you would take it. So Egypt would invade for a while, then the northern countries would invade for a while, and everyone wanted to take over. That's bad news. That's where you have to live. Okay, so here's some of the kings. We've got Athaliah, Joash, and Judah, Jehoiada. You'll get an idea if you read the story on how you get a sequence of good kings and bad kings. Okay, Athaliah was a queen mother who killed all of her children and grandchildren so she could take the throne. After her son was king, and after he died, she killed all the rest so she could be the queen. Nice lady. She didn't get to kill Joash. Joash's nurse hid him, took him to the priest Jehoiada in the temple, and they hid him for 7 years because he was a baby. And when he was 7 years old, they revealed him as the true king of the country, descended from David, that had been rescued from the massacre that the grandmother had done. And so there was a big deal, and the priest had the army and the temple army were all there guarding him. They proclaimed him king over Judah. She was executed for treason and blah, blah, blah. And that happened in chapter 11 and 12. Then we have Samaria conquering, and they attack Jerusalem. And I'm pretty sure it's Isaiah that says, "Let's time to go away. Don't be scared." You know, the whole prophecy, remember the prophecy? The virgin will give birth to a son before he is 3 years old. We haven't done that yet, have we? He will know how to eat birds and honey. We haven't done that. We haven't done Isaiah. That's prophesying. Isaiah is camped outside Jerusalem. Assyria is camped outside Jerusalem. And Isaiah says, don't worry, within 3 years, this army will be gone. Before that baby is grown up, there'll be food aplenty, there'll be no more famine, you'll be able to go out and farm again, you won't have to stay hiding in Jerusalem. God will deliver you. And so you have a series of times when Jerusalem's attacked, but not defeated because of God is with them. We have Hezekiah. Hezekiah becomes the king. He's a good king. He celebrates the Passover like they've never celebrated before. He turns the nation back to God. He says we should rebuild the temple and worship God and all that sort of thing. Discovers the law. So discovers the book of the law. It's been in one of the guys comes to the temple from the temple and says, hey, I found a book. Really? You found a book? Reads to the king. Oh, this is the book of the law of the Lord. We haven't obeyed this law. We are in trouble. Let's repent. Let's come back to God. Let's celebrate the Passover. Let's renew our covenant with God. It's all good. His son Manasseh and Manasseh's son Amon become kings. They set up idol worship in Jerusalem. This is not a good thing, right? So they start doing child sacrifice in Jerusalem and all this sort of thing. So they are bad, bad, bad kings. And in their lifetimes is when the prophecies are made that Babylon will come and destroy you because you've turned away and now you're offering children sacrifices. All the things that God hates you have done. The covenant is over. God's broken the covenant. You've broken the covenant. Your days are numbered. Jerusalem will fall. And then Josiah comes. He's Amon's son. He finds the law of the Lord. He brings the country back to God again. Sends out people to teach the people how to follow God. But after his lifetime, the Jerusalem falls and is invaded, and Babylon comes. And this is when Babylon comes, Daniel and his mates get exiled to Babylon, and we start some of that end of the history stuff happening. It's important to note that in the history we read, and we sort of pick it up, Jerusalem is invaded, the best people are taken, and a king is set up in Jerusalem who was supposed to be loyal to the king of Babylon and pay taxes. After a couple of years, he says, no, I'm out. We're not going to pay taxes anymore. So Babylon army comes back again, invades again. And they set up another king in the air. And this happens a couple of times. And so this is why you'll read prophecies about it's going to fall, and then you read prophecies about restoration, and it's going to fall again because they keep turning their backs on Babylon several times. And what's also going on is that Babylon invades. Egypt doesn't like that, so Egypt comes and tries to invade. And then Babylon comes and invades, and they're stuck in the middle. And you'll often hear the prophet saying, do not trust Egypt. Because the tendency was that they would make an alliance with Egypt against Babylon. And then again and again, Jeremiah, do not trust Egypt. Egypt is useless. Don't trust Egypt. But returned to Babylon, not to Egypt. And this whole argument going on, and this is what's happening. The king in charge is thinking, if we made a treaty with Egypt, Egypt will come and rescue us from Babylon, and we won't pay tax to Babylon anymore. And so they do that, and then Egypt is defeated in battle, and then Babylon comes in and destroys Jerusalem again. And this happens several times. And then the end of the story. And it's sort of summarized a little bit, and that we don't get the full detail of it in Exodus. Okay, we are going to the last 3 minutes. We're going to do this. We're going to put these sheets of paper in order. Okay, so make sure we've got a full handle on the history. I've messed them all up as much as I can. There's one for you. There's one for you. There's one for you. Now, the way this works is, I don't know how you guys are going to do this. Philomena, this is one for you. Okay. This is great. You can see that. Right.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. Cosmo, this is your one. Okay, you got that. Oh, I get to be David. That's pretty cool. Okay. You can Solomon as well. You can. You can Now, the way this works is this pulpit area is Jerusalem. Okay? Now we're going to put these in sequence, and if you happen to be the one that should be in Jerusalem at the time in order, then you come and stand here and you say who I am, what I'm doing here. Okay? You have to do it in order. So who comes first? You don't know what everyone else is about, you have to work it out. What have you all got? This is Cosmo.
Oh, judges.
Cosmo, you come first. Cosmo, come and stand here. Hey, Paul. Grab a seat, mate. We'll be ready in a minute. Cosmo is here. Cosmo, tell us who you are and why you were here.
Judges. Oh, what have you done, Riri?
Yeah.
Judges was before there was any official, like, kings.
Yep.
That would be first.
Yes, that's right. Can you name the judge?
Gideon, Samson, Delilah.
Yeah, awesome. Very good. Localized leaders. Okay. One. Okay. How you going, Rebecca? All right, who's next? Okay, come on.
So the people wanted a king, and so God said, this guy can be a king.
Yes. Saul's king. Well done. Are you a good king?
But sometimes.
Sometimes you're a good king. Yeah. Okay, who's next?
David is a king. He comes after Saul.
Yeah.
And replaces him as God's chosen anointed. Yeah.
Good king or bad king?
Good king.
Good king after God's own heart. Very good. Who's next?
Solomon was David's son, and he built the temple in Jerusalem.
Yes, very good. Okay, who's next?
Josh and I go together.
No, you don't.
Well, it was actually
Okay.
south and north.
Yes. Okay.
Because before David,
Yes.
he wasn't ruling over both of them at the same time, and then he took over both, and then it got split again.
Yes.
After his son.
Okay, we've got North and South Kingdoms. Very good. I'll take that. Okay. North Kingdom has calf idols and bad kings. South Kingdom has sometimes they're good, right? Okay. Who's next?
Would it be Babylon?
Oh, okay.
The kingdom. Yeah.
Is North and South can come back up. North and South can come back up. Yeah. North and South are here. Hello, my name's Assyria. Go away.
Oh no.
This is how it works, right? I come over. Okay, what happens after that?
Yeah.
What happens after? Hello, Philomena is Babylon.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, here we are. Assyria and Babylon now here, and this is the end of the story. Right, very good. Da, 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 da. So that's our quick summary of all of Kings and Chronicles. When you're reading prophets, work out who they're talking to, north or south. Okay, North Kingdom is called, sometimes it's called Israel, sometimes it's called Samaria, sometimes it's called Jacob. Southern Kingdom is normally called Israel or Judah, maybe Jerusalem. Jacob is predominantly northern. Yeah, okay, and this is the names that they have. So you've got to work out based on the context, who are they talking to, what stage in history are they at, have they been invaded yet or not, and all that sort of thing to work out what's going on, what the prophecy is actually about. Okay, Kings and Chronicles we can race through in a very short time because it's basically the same stories as Chronicles is basically the same stories as Kings again, except from a slightly different perspective, pretty much from the point of view of the priests rather than from the point of view of the kings. So you'll see more work relating to the law, more work relating to the temple, more information about the priests that were guiding the kings, keeping them out of trouble. That sort of stuff is more in Chronicles. So the story of them bringing the ark to Jerusalem is in both books, more detail in Chronicles than in Kings. Things like that. That's what Chronicles is all about. And so we could quickly go through that. The main things in Chronicles that are different, you see David, Solomon, Judah. Yeah, you don't really have much to do with the Northern Kingdom. Priests went in the Northern Kingdom, didn't care, it was gone. Judah was all that was left. That's all that mattered. David and his kingdom, David as the king, is the model that's focused on that lot. The temple is high profile, we how to worship God. Obedience is the key factor, and idolatry will lead to exile. You'll see that again and again. There's an interesting quote. Might be in the text at the end of the year for your vet students. Although officially a monotheistic nation, monotheistic, one God, ungodly leadership frequently introduced polytheism, multiple gods. Depending on who was the king at the time, depending on whether they swung towards one God or swung towards the idols of the nations. Again and again and again, said over and over again. Okay, that is going to be the wrap up on Chronicles and Kings for now. We will stop now. We are going to take a 30-second break and then we will have a leadership presentation from Paul Ray. So I'm about to disappear from here. Josh, if we could stop the recording and start the recording.